Good morning, everyone, and welcome to our webinar this morning, where we're going to have Zwart take us through talking turf and also introduce the basics of greenkeeping. Zwart has been passionate about turf maintenance since her internship at Pebble Beach in 1996. She had the privilege of working 5 Masters events and the 2024 Masters with her son, Nick. Her dream is to work another Masters with her daughter, the first to work at Augusta, and additionally US Opens at Olympic Club, Shinnecock Hills, and Pebble Beach. Volunteering at the majors has given her new insight into reaching for the stars, um, which she pulled through to Leopard Creek as a superintendent from 97 to 2005, and later Mobela Stadium, where she's a groundsman since 2014. It's a privilege to support the South African golf courses with education and turf management skills in a sustainable manner. So without any further ado, Sue, thanks so much for joining us today, and we look forward to learning the tricks of the trade.
Thank you so much, Francois. I appreciate you guys having me. No problem. Thank you to Adrian, Yonetta, and your team, and thanks for all the good you guys do. Guys, we're going to run through this, and please feel free to stop me for questions at any point. I'd like to have your views and have some debates throughout this session. Okay, so we're going to start with construction because basically this is really critical. You know, not all of us have the opportunity to start with a new build, and that's fine. But if you do have the opportunity to start with a new build, please do it right. Okay, so as you can see, this is the sub-base, and you dig in your trenches for your drainage. There's your 110 pipe. This is your gravel band and your 300 mils of sand with your turf on top. If you're building for sub-air, the only change you need to make is this pipe is increased to 160 millimeter pipe, and you drain out of one end, not two ends. So it's well worth building for sub-air, even if you don't do a permanent installation up front. This was our rebuild at Leopard Creek in 1999. It just gives you an actual in-the-ground situation with your main line going down there. Because we built for sub-air, it could only drain out of the front. Your laterals are typically 3 meters apart. And then if you do sub-air, you've got a water separator tank here where you'll take the water out to the edge, and you've got a unit where you can vacuum out excess moisture or blow in air, and that is a great tool as it gives you full control of your growing medium. And as you will see through this presentation, oxygen is key for us, particularly in disease prevention. I was always very concerned about Pythium at Leopard Creek because we were growing bent grass. And Mr. Rupert said, I want bent. I said, no problem, then I want sub-air, and that was our compromise. So the other thing that's important is, remember, if you are constructing, to put an intermediate like this plastic layer between your green and your surrounds, because this water moves between these areas, and it can become very tricky if you don't put that interface. Then your gravel quality is really important. The materials you use, have them tested, and ensure your gravel is clean, doesn't have dust in it, because the dust will clog your drains. This is important. Yeah, so this is, I'm going to be sharing some information from a mentor, Dr. Rich Hurley, and this just falls into this section. So soil oxygen is critical for healthy turf. Soils that do not drain well and hold excessive soil moisture make it very hard to produce good quality turf during the summer heat. Okay, so the takeaway here is, really, do you find good greens that drain poorly? Yeah, so your sand selection is critical because ultimately your sand selection, your construction, your gravel, your maintenance sand, it all relates to drainage. Dusting you can use a finer material when you're dusting. Although when you hollow tine, you've got to use your same sand as you constructed with. And for me, there's only one lab that I use. That's Thomas Turf in the USA. It's well worth it doing your material testing and make sure that the sands you use at your golf course are the right ones. Okay, so you pick your turf according to your climate and your budget. So if you are in a hot, humid climate and you're going to decide to grow bent grass, well, that's going to be an expensive choice. If you decide to grow Outwardorf Bermuda, that's a very expensive choice. So if you are Kamatipoort, I'm sure a lot of you have played Kambaku, they chose Royal Blue tea to green, which is the perfect selection for that climate. You can mow it at 3 mils, even lower, get a great playing surface, and they can afford to maintain it. And if you are in a frost region, then you're going to pick a bent grass, like, Joburg. Anybody in the Joburg area, growing bent and kikuyu is a very doable task. So don't fight nature. I think that's what I'm trying to say. So these are your choices on your cool season grasses. You would typically go with bent, and on your warm season, for me, the variety of choice is definitely Royal Blue, easy to maintain, great playing surface. Some of the new paspalums are really good, but to get them into South Africa, I just don't think you're going to get the benefit over the Royal Blue, and the Outwardorf Bermuda is very high maintenance. So yeah, I wouldn't go there unless you have a particular skill set. And then on your fairways, kikuyu is just a very easy grass to grow unless you are sitting with high humidity. And if you want to bring in the bump and run into the game, like for Leopard Creek, Kambaku, Sabi, these areas, the obvious choice. And for our coastal area in Natal and the Eastern Cape, Bermudas are a really good choice. Whereas if you are in a frost region, South Africa, I would really just say go with kikuyu, because it's bomb proof. Tall fescue is a very nice option. I've put it in for both areas because I'm sure if any of you have had the opportunity to play Pazula, I was consulting to them when they went through the conversion, and I was skeptical to start. I still remember saying to Danny Moritz, let's hit some golf balls off the stuff. Let's make sure. And it is a very nice option. And the new turf type tall fescues are a great playing surface. So Harzendal also has some tall fescue, and there may be some other properties. Okay, so power and your greens. I think this is something which in South Africa we don't. If you have power on your green, you've got to really go through this thought process. So I'm sure you guys are well aware of all of these top clubs that are power greens. Shinnecock Hills, we'll talk about it, are some of the best greens I've ever seen for a major. So is power a good playing surface? Is this power, guys? Or do you think this is power? You can give me a thumbs up or down, or is this what you would associate with power? Okay, with the seed heads. Now we can control the seed heads. Your power seeds in April and August, typically in South Africa. So if you don't want to encourage your power don't hollow tine in April and August, because, you know, that is when you're going to be pushing a lot of poa seed into the ground. So just going back to this photo, this poa can be a very good playing surface, but you've got to maintain it as poa. So some of the best poa greens I've seen in South Africa were the Otaniqua greens, which I think it was in the early 2000s were rebuilt. Okay, then you've got to trial before you try something. So actually, one of my very first day working at Pebble, I was raking the seawall bunker, and the guys were laughing at me because the waves were crashing in and I was trying to rake around it. So one of the trials they run is a seashore paspalum here, which has been really effective, but they've trialed it properly for 2 years, and now, you know, making the change in that area. I met a great mentor working my first master's in 97. I'm sure you guys remember Tiger's win. It was the most incredible event. And working at the 12th green, I had the privilege of being stationed with Dr. Rich Hurley. And I've got there a lot of great takeaways, which I would like to share with you. So Rich is a very well-known bent grass breeder, and that you'll learn to understand. So L93 was one of his first grasses, which is still a favorite of mine. I'm not sure if you guys have played Gari lately. The whole surrounds complex of Gari is L93. It's bomb-proof. It's very disease-resistant, easy maintenance grass. But he's probably better known for his new greens varieties. As you can see, this is the 007 XL, a very nice playing surface, and 007 is one of my favorite grasses. So I always think, let's not reinvent the wheel, you know. So I'm not a fan of blends of bent grass. I think if you decide to grow a variety, then rather run with the variety. But that's my personal choice. So while everybody was going with the A1, A4 blend, I preferred the A1. Augusta had the A1. We had trialed it for a long time, and so we decided to go with that. So I prefer those decisions. Yeah, so the new bents, the advantage of going with the new varieties are they are more disease resistant. Some of them with the fineness does become tricky with your dusting, but it is an incredible playing surface. So, but once again, you know, your equipment has to match the decisions you're making. So I found this advice of Dr. Hurley's to a committee, and I just thought I'm really going to share this with you guys because, you know, Greens committees have the best intentions, but I think he really sums it up well. So having observed the actions of Greens committees for decades, which he has, all who served in the best interest of the club should reflect on the following and try and incorporate these points in their own commentary. Okay, so his advice, I really couldn't have put it better myself. So the golfers or the members' expectations versus the reality of the course budget. Okay. So I think we've got to look at budgets and say, okay, guys, within our budget, this is what we can achieve. And also look at the history, because unfortunately, clubs throughout the world, it's a huge issue in the UK right now, and we have certain clubs in South Africa that are also facing this battle. You have your operating budget, which is already hard enough for clubs to run with. Then you have your equipment, so your capex, that's a big budget. You're probably looking at about 20 million rand on an 18-hole course. Then you've got your irrigation replacement budget, which is the same, if not larger, than the equipment budget. And nobody budgets for that irrigation repair. Not nobody, but most clubs. I'd say 80% of clubs do not budget for that. And then you typically would have a fund where you're doing projects where you, like you've got a really wet area, you need to add a drain or add a cart path, or some people like flower beds or whatever your thing is. And then don't compare yourself to other courses. So I think the great thing is with TV and comparing ourselves to other courses, it does help us to push to new levels and be inspired by each other. But I think let's also understand, so within your management, choose the right person for your environment. And it always amazes me when placements are made. There've been, there's a lot of movement in our industry, and they will, for instance, appoint a superintendent, and I will be, well, that is the last person I would have put with that committee, that membership, and that golf course, because I can't see it working. Your growing conditions vary, and it takes certain skill sets, and you've got to be able to function within a budget. So there are guys that can, grow grass anywhere, and it can be tricky. Okay, so moving on to how the lack of cultural practices affect your playing surface. I think this on the right, this is Pythium root rot, which has become a very real issue for a lot of clubs in South Africa, but it can be avoided. Now, I think I want to give us the tools to see that. So this is part of Richard's advice to the committee, is select your aerification dates first prior to making your golf calendar. Okay, so that it could be tricky in year one, but it's not tricky for 5 years ahead. So we can really, so the Daniel at Leopard Creek, for instance, we used to have an event in January, February, and I said to Mr. Rupert, you've got to be kidding, in this heat and humidity, and you've got to come through a very tricky time. So he was like, okay, your choice is November, December, January, February. What is the best of those 4 months? So that's when we ended up on December, which is typically the driest of those 4 months and the easiest to maintain turf. So golfers don't like aerification, and you want to minimize it. But the reality is, if you want to produce a playing surface long term, you have to aerify. So aerification, if you're on a good, healthy, normal golf course with decent drainage twice a year, is good enough. If it's not, then as Rich says, up to 6 aerifications. And I mean, we are battling, and I think that's where I'm seeing a lot of issues come in, where the superintendent is not strong enough to stand up to the committee, and they're being convinced to do this or that, or no aerification, or not removing organic matter. And your playing surface is your infiltration rate, which is how your water moves through the profile, reduces by 13% a year. So, this is where you need to talk, but the bottom line is the bare minimum is twice a year, and we are really fighting hard to get that back into our clubs. And with all this Pythium, as a result of primarily lack of cultural practices, things will hopefully change. So if there's a conflict on dates, find the compromise. And I think for me, this is where the golf director plays a huge role in recording the history, mapping the golf rounds. So if your busiest rounds are this time of year, when is the best time? We need to get it in look, September and March would be ideal, but if it can't be September and March, let's talk about what can work for you and your club. But the bottom line is the loss of revenue in the short term will be far greater when you run into issues. Okay, so if you choose to hollow tine, which hopefully everybody does, then the point is, if you see on this, do you see this column of sand? This is quite a deep aerification, but as you can see, there's material building here that's needed a deep aerification. So you can see here, you've got a fairly decent growing medium, quite a bit of thatch over there. But the only way you're going to get the sand into the hole is by brooming it in by hand. So I see a lot of aerifications done. Sand is thrown on by hand, then or sometimes by machine. So you're collapsing the holes as you are using a machine. A lot of people would disagree with this, but every club I've been involved with over the years has done it this way, and I've seen the benefits of it. So, and then you put a drag mat on, you're collapsing holes. So if you can do it with machines and achieve this, then be my guest. But you need to be achieving this. And once again, remember the sand that you're brooming in must be the USGA construction material or as close to your growing medium as you built with. So that is the rule of thumb. And if you haven't built with the USGA material and you're unsure, that is when I would send your core material and your top dressing to Thomas Turf to test it. So verticutting is a great tool, hollow tining and the combination thereof. This is a Graydon, which is a great tool if cultural practices have got a bit behind and you're sitting with an inch of thatch, or even if they haven't, if you have a lot of thatch in your top inch, this is a great tool, particularly if you're wanting, well, a healthy playing surface, but B, to create a nice firm playing surface. It really, it's slow. I get it, it's slow. You're putting in a dry sand, which is very effective, as the reason for sand is the abrasive action with organic matter breaking down. So it really, I can't explain the benefits. It's very good. Okay, so a recipe for disaster is these are greens profiles in South Africa, guys, where clubs are saying, sorry, you cannot hollow tine. And this is not going to end well, and it didn't end well. Okay, so superintendent told, can't hollow tine. He should have fought for it. You've got a growing medium down there somewhere. So this, in effect, will be poor drainage. And when you get into November to Feb, you have very little control of how much water you're putting down. So if you have poor drainage, your disease will come, and a typical disease will then be Pythium root rot. At the same time, from your spring treatment, you can be putting down your preventative fungicides. Your nutrition must be balanced. Your nutrition must be according to soil needs. So all of these factors play a part. Any questions, guys?
Hi, Sue. This is really awesome. I've actually pretty much zoning in out of here. So I just wanted to ask on the drainage side of things, depending on the grass, would this also affect drainage?
Not really. So the turf type would not really affect the drainage. So regardless of your turf type, you're going to lose 13% infiltration typically in a year. That's what studies have shown. So a Bermuda will thatch more, so you'll need to verticut it more. Typically, every 21 days at least in from September to April. And you would need to be more aggressive with your verticutting. Where bench, you could probably get away with a 0 verticut and go to -1, like maybe a few times a year. Bermuda, you've got to be onto it with every 21 days. And that could lead to the difference in drainage. Does that make sense?
Thank you, Sue.
Okay. Right. So, sorry, I hope I answered that question. So how maintenance affects bunker playability. So every 3 months, we need to check our sand depth and edge to the original design. So just like we saw on a green where you're putting in the edging, when you construct a bunker, I love to put in like a white rigid plastic liner. It doesn't have to be deep, that you can take an irrigation flag and just edge to that. But with the GPS, you can also get away with it, but I prefer to just use simple methods. I've seen bunker playability for me, and I'm sure for you guys, is such a frustration because I think it's just an education where you guys can play a huge role, making your teams understand that the ball should roll into the base of a bunker where you've got a nice playable shot. You don't want a fried egg. You don't want to be standing on a slope. You don't want to be up at a lip. And that all comes down to maintenance. So what I found is if you on a weekly basis commit to taking a SandPro, you spray a wetting agent. It can be a cheap wetting agent that just holds moisture, and then you track it with the SandPro, leave those tracks in until the Tuesday when you rake your bunkers. Every week you've got less bunkers to compact, and it works very well. So I think for me, also on a green side bunker, you're wanting a nice fluff. It's not the best example, but typically your green side bunker would be hand raked. You don't want these ridges that you're seeing here. And so your target is a fluff of inch on a green side bunker. On a fairway bunker, you're targeting half an inch of fluff. And but the construction of a bunker, like the layers you put the sand in, just compacting as you put it in, is really important. So yeah, edging bunkers, this is a place where it's a necessary evil, but you want to maintain the shapes of your bunkers. And then the nose of a bunker. So this we would call a nose here. That needs to be tight. If you've got a thin turf full of weeds and insects and the ball's going to plug in there. So we spray PGRs. It really works out inexpensive to spray those areas, particularly around bunkers. Get a nice tight playing surface. Malalang Country Club is a great example where I had them doing this, and their faces just within 3 applications really started tightening up. So that ideally, as you know, the ball must bounce onto the face, roll into the bunker, and then roll down this face. So I really like what we call a tournament ring. I'm going to just... Sorry, don't know why I'm... What? So sorry, I just want to zoom out the slide here. Let me try and, there we go. So this would be your tournament ring. So if the ball hits this, it will roll into this base where you've got a really nice playable section. But sometimes you guys will also find that this ring is made too big. So the ball will sit here, which is also not ideal. So I think this is where the golf director has such an important role to play. Just edgy. So for me, this is ideal. You take a squeegee, you compact that little face, the ball rolls here, and you've got a great playing surface. And then your rake placement. So typically you would place your rake like here, always the head of the handle towards the green. That's just how we do it. You're not going to place it here where the ball could roll in. You're not going to place it here where the ball could get caught on there. And also, if you place it here, you're going to encourage a golfer to walk down that face, which you really don't want to do. That is a big challenge. We had just on this, we had a ruling at the US Open where Spieth and Tiger were playing together. And with the grass really long, one of the caddies had dropped a rake in long grass. It wasn't visible. And Spieth hit that rake and he actually hurt his wrist. So yeah, it's the responsibility of the caddy to where they place the rake, but those are things to consider. If you want to cap, so when you're doing an event or now with the drones doing photography, it's really important that your sand color is uniform throughout. Well, the course would be nice, but definitely per hole. But remember, if you want to do this, sand takes a long time to settle. You've got to do it a minimum 3 months before an event. Okay, so just a quick checklist on bunkers. Rake your bunkers, obviously, daily for play. Trim, and every 3 months, you should be doing your bunker edging and sand levels. Drainage levels, if you see a bunker is not draining, there are lots of simple methods. We rebuilt, so Leopard's bunkers, we used a gravel blanket base into drains, and we put shade cloth over, and it was very effective. I do love Mike Schultz's for the faces. That's very effective. But the bottom line is, after your greens, bunkers are the highest maintenance area on your course. So typically there would be 1 hectare. If you're sitting with 2 hectares of bunkers and you can't afford to maintain them, then reduce your bunkers to a size where you can maintain them, because they are expensive to maintain and they need to be done properly. Any questions on bunkers? Okay, moving on to green speed. So this is Darren from the USGA. They're really good with their setup, but it's a process. So green speed is really a game of give and take. So you've got your turf quality one side and you've got your green speed the other side. And I think if all parties understand this, so the superintendent, if he's not a golfer, it's important that they understand green speed. If they're a golfer, they typically get it. But you've got to peak for your key events. Okay, you cannot peak day in and day out. Something's going to give. So you decide what the most important events are for your club. If you don't host a tournament, then you rate your events and peak your course for those periods. And it's a great time to use it as a time for the course to excel and raise the bar constantly as they prepare for an event. So this is Rich Hurley's take on this as well. Pushing for green speed all the time may kill. A day-to-day course setup, green speeds of 10 can be attained without too much wear and tear. Remember, this is also dependent on the weather. So if you are in a very wet period, you need to get oxygen in the root zone. You need to be like spiking weekly, up to weekly, just to get that, avoid issues. If it's really, really hot, you cannot go and put rollers on greens. You're going to run into trouble. Your edges, you can plan it, but you can certainly peak for your member events to get your greens to 11, 12, 13, whatever you want. You know, I love preparing a hard, fast green. But sometimes the undulations or the wind, you know, that's not what you want. So for the health of the green after an event, so after your major event, whether it be member guest or club champs, you've got to take the pressure off and just give it some recovery time. Because if you just keep the heat on constantly, something's going to give. And it's the same for corporates. You know, you've just got to plan that your maintenance team have a gap. So a 1T start is awesome because it gives your crew a gap. Or if you can't do that, you give them, I don't know, maybe you go to a shotgun start, 11 o'clock shotgun start for corporate days. That really gives your crew just a gap to get into the course. Ultimately, you need time to get water down, to just get work done. You don't need to roll. So rolling is a great tool, and it can be like on a Monday, if you decide for a roll only, it's got great benefits, dollar spot, anthracnose, great benefits. But in severe heat, so part of the prep for Shinnecock 2004, and then I followed this maintenance for the Dunhill in 2005, and I was blown away by only doing a roll the Sunday before the event and cutting morning and afternoon until we got no grass Monday to Sunday. Was the best greens prep we had ever done. So rolling is not the be all and end all. Oh, guys, this is where we really, really need to work together. So corporate events, branding, vehicles. Okay, so I actually was sitting in the superintendent's office at Augusta when a truck driver came in and he said, "Mr. Benson, I'm terribly sorry. I've put one wheel onto your turf. Could we go and look at it and see how we can resolve this?" And the three of us drove out. It really wasn't a big deal. It was about a meter, but they were aware of it. So anybody who came onto Leopard for the event would first meet with me, and we do the same with Mbombela Stadium. We've just had a church event and who wanted to set up in our north and center hours. So we changed it to the west. It's got to work for the golf course, and because the damage these guys do, I cannot explain the damage, and it is so frustrating for the course. So don't allow corporates onto the property or branding that does not meet with the superintendent and he puts the rules in place. So I was visiting a club. This is their own team. This shows you the damage that can be done even internally. Between the green and the bunker, guys. So compaction is a killer. I've also been at events where they'll say, "Guys, let's all have a photo on the green." Like, what? Why would you do a photo on the green? So there are severe consequences to these decisions. Having the player's perspective makes such a difference. So having your role as the PGA Pro is so important. Working this US Open with Nikki Price, who was with us on the greens, course setup here, been involved in the heights of cut, in all the prep. It just makes it so nice. So I've had the privilege of having Ernie's input over the years. So just try and get your perspective as a player through to the club. And, you know, there's so many unnecessary costs that don't need to be incurred. When you're preparing for an event, don't grow up with the rough in out of play areas. It's not necessary. So there are a lot of things where you could add value. Then drawing up your pin sheets. I love having these rotations, but when you draw it up, you really need to think through it. You could have a tough rotation, you can have one that you know is going to be typically easy, but make sure that if you want to move from so this is just like a very easy rotation right there, but think about your traffic when you do these rotations, because I'm going to move to this slide, sorry, here. So if you are doing, this is Pebble, the fourth, if they're putting through 80,000 rounds a year, if you put the number 1 pin here and number 2 tomorrow, then you're jamming this area today and tomorrow. So rather try and split your traffic. So think about if your pin's there and then you go there, the difference of pressure on the green, it really does make a big difference. And then obviously you would know as a golfer that you're going to have a front pin, and you're going to have a middle pin, you're going to have a back pin, and you're also going to split your lefts and rights evenly as much as you can. So those are things that your golf course superintendent does not necessarily understand. And I had the privilege of working with Mr. Rupert. He would do the course setup personally, and I did it with him until he was comfortable that I understood that how you could change the tees. And for the Dunhill and the events, we really got to work through this. And then after an event, we would also rate the hole according to what it played. So if it was a par 4, did it play as a -1 or a +2? What stroke did it ultimately play with, and how can we change it? How can we improve it? So it was very interesting. The pin marking, guys, as you will all know, this is one of my pet peeves. Please, if you're going to mark a pin, just take the lid off the can, test it off the green, and make a small dot. Maybe not white, because that's often confused with birds, but I think a lot more thought and care could be put into course setup and working together. Then get your superintendent before they cut the cup to knit the paint mark so that it's not visible on the green. There's no reason to see 20 dots, different colors on a green. And also change the pins at least like 3 times a week. You know, there should be standards like that. This is I thought a very nice way to explain setting up the pins. I'm sure you all understand it. This was at the US Open at Pebble in 2019.
Sue, I think you just need to share the sound for the sound to come through.
Oh, shame. Okay. Well, let me. Wait, let me see. I don't know why it's not sharing. So basically, what is important, guys, is that you put. I'll keep playing the video, but what is important is that you can put a flag or a T to the whole location, and then sorry, let me just reduce the sound on my side. So, you know, there you're putting to the whole location from all sides. We've all made that error. Well, I certainly have, of not looking at the whole location from all the sides. It's obviously very dependent on your green speed. and you don't want, your greens as the golf director. So it's really important to plan this, market, and educate your teams that are on the ground. So like Shinnecock, there was a ruling issue. There was a very terrible hole location in 2004, but it was a young USGA guy that wasn't familiar with the greens and didn't take into account the speed of the greens. And at that point, I don't remember them putting on the greens then. So it's very different now. And the measuring tape, you have your turning point in the fairway, so your point of play into your approach to the green, and you'll create a tee, and that's where you'll measure your pins for. So it's important. Your superintendent will not understand that unless he's been involved in events. So cup painting, TV really highlights this. So it's important, if you choose to paint a cup, that it is painted well. Houghton do a fantastic job at cup painting. So if anybody needs to train their cup painting, I'd highly recommend using Houghton to train them. Then your tee alignment. So you put a string out from tee to tee. And I think it may be the angle of my photo, because these tees were actually well aligned. So then your mowing patterns go, so your light stripe pulls through, and you guys can see this mowing pattern is taking you to the direction of play. And that's one of the things Ernie has taught me, where like here on this fairway, for instance, if you're going to stripe this into the bush on the left, that's not great for the golfer. So I think it's nice to think about that as well. But this would be what I would say unnecessary. If you want to get back to member play and that's a priority for you and you want to keep costs down, then I would never grow up rough around tees, which is never going to be in play. That's just unnecessary. So we want to produce our ultimate playing surface, and detail is so important. And planning, as you know, is as critical. So this 12 fescue flowering here, this trial had been run, I think, like 4 times, same time of year, and they knew it took 6 weeks for that 12 fescue to be in peak flowering. So things don't happen by chance. It goes about planning. So an event, whether it be your club champs, it's, plan for it, plan and help your club plan for it. Then to work, it's so important that we work as a team. And for me, the vibe at Pebble is just amazing. So Hector and I had actually mowed greens together years ago. This was Tournament Thursday, US Open 2019. He was going out to cut the cups, and this was Hector. Oh, I don't know. Can you hear the sound? No. Oh, just a great vibe. Sorry, I don't know why the sound is not sharing through. Let me just see, because I've got one more. Baba, who is the superintendent. He's now superintendent of a facility with 4 clubs. Just so amazing in morning meetings, creating the vibe, creating the hub. And I think for me, if you're working with a golf director and a manager who's so excited about the quality you producing and sharing the vision with you, it makes such a difference. And then you will gladly assist with issues. Not everything will be perfect, and you'll take their ideas on board, because at the end of the day, you are only as strong as your team, and each team player has a very important part to play. So I have some more slides to share, but I really want to open this up to questions and questions on any topics that affect you, if you guys would like to have some discussions.
Brian, you can unmute yourself and ask your question.
Hi, Brian.
Oh, good morning. This is Brian from Isla Golf Club. So I got a few. I think it's firstly starting from the
Okay,
the relation.
sorry, Brian, did you have a question?
Yes. Can you guys hear me?
So can you hear Brian talk?
Can you hear me?
Fransha, can you hear me, you guys?
Yes, yes, I can hear you. I can hear Brian too, but can you hear Brian talk?
Can you hear me, Sue? I don't think Sue can hear me.
Doesn't look like it.
Yeah, yeah. Um,
That
can
is
you hear
really
me?
hard.
Sorry, can you hear me now? Are you battling to hear me?
No, we can hear you. We're just checking if you can hear me.
I can now. Sorry, I couldn't.
Here we go. Here we go. Here we go. All right. So with me, there's a couple of points here, especially with regards to the relationship between the golf superintendent and the golf director and the management at large in the club. Because right here where I am, it's not so much of a busy golf course here in the Middle East. It's in Jordan, the only golf course. However, our driving range is quite a big one, and most of the time it gets used for like events, like weddings and concerts. And it gets affected badly after the event because there's like heavy trucks, machinery, a big stage that is erected on there, and it's almost to a point where the superintendent or the golf director does not have much say because the event that is coming in here is bringing so much revenue that it's fine. We'll try and fix the grass after the event because this event is bringing so much revenue that your golfers can be bringing, so it's just one of those, and sometimes it affects the players or the golfers experience because when they come here they're expecting to get like a 5-star service. Now they're getting, due to the driving range either being set on the other side or being closed completely, due to the event that is happening. So those are some of the challenges. Like for instance, now it
Brian,
is.
sorry, Brian, can I just cut you in there?
Sure.
So what I found with events, so we all face events. The best thing is meet with the event planner 1 month prior to the event, or even longer. When they book the event, meet with the planner, look at the plan, okay? And then discuss how you can minimize the damage to the event, your access points, where you set up. So until you're able to get to that point, and I think if you can get buy-in from your management to do that, it makes a huge difference. Okay, so do that. And then from the golf course standpoint, you can certainly prepare, like we use plant growth regulators, which would work very well for you in the Middle East. I'm sure you guys are doing that. We use Rider, which is a sunblock. And then, you fertilize before the event so that your turf is going to be healthy and start peaking as you come out. You have a nursery on standby where you can quickly fill in the damage. So I think if you guys sit down and actually plan, you can really minimize the impact. It is frustrating because it does pay the bills, but until you take the lead on controlling and minimizing the damage, it is a very frustrating journey.
Yeah, no, it is.
Any other questions?
How's it? It's Wayne Cranbeck here.
Hi, Wayne.
Yeah, good. So just one of the topics you brought up there was the striping on tee boxes and getting your mowing lines sort of on target. And I think just one of the things that's worked well, and because a lot of guys work on golf estates, so on golf estates you've got a lot of homes that come into play on various holes. So what's worked well in the past, and it's just a tip for guys, is your mowing line can also guide people away from hitting into areas that are problematic on estates. So you can do the same on your fairways, because it's such a visual thing and from a golfing point of view. So a guy tends to tee up in line with how you've mowed your tee boxes. So it's a great deterrent to help guys stay away from homes that are being peppered with golf balls, if you want to put it that way. So it's also just a nice tip to do, but yeah, they're very, very helpful on the whole subject. Thank you.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Thank you, Wayne. So, Ernie has a very strong viewpoint on this. So it's nice to see that you agree with it, and thank you. That's a very nice tip.
There's a few hands, so we're going to go in order. So first starting with Dietrich, you can proceed.
Thanks, Francois. Hi, Sue. Yeah, thanks very much. Firstly, just for doing this. I think it's a really important subject that our members at clubs really need to take note of. My question's really maybe a follow-on from Brian, and I think it's got to do with communication. So as I've said to you in the past, one of the things that I really miss from not being at a golf club is those early morning coffees with a greenkeeper and actually just talking to the greenkeeper. So I know that there's formal meetings and there's informal meetings. Would you propose that having a early morning informal coffee with the greenkeeper every morning to be an advantage, or is that way too often to meet with that greenkeeper for communication purposes?
I think it's a great idea, Dietrich, and for me, you can't communicate enough. And so we typically are starting early out on the course, and by 8 o'clock, the pressure is off, and you're so ready to grab a quick cup of coffee. And what I've learned from Jeff at St. Francis and Ronnie at Highland Gate is they really pay attention to the group of golfers coming in that day, and and so it's nice to do that. Be prepared for the golfers. I think it's a great tip.
Thanks, Sue. Yeah, and thanks again for everything. I appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you, Dietrich.
Next one we're going to go to is JC Kutzer. You can ask your question. Just remember to unmute yourself, JC.
Sorry. Hi, Sue. Hi, everyone. Sue, so my question leads to just to the spring treatment. So, is it necessary for 2 spring treatments a year? So, does it all depend? So, my question is basically, does it depend on amount of golfers that you have, and also types of grass and your environment conditions? So, for an example, I always believed in 2 holotyning a year, one before winter and then one before spring. And what we've tried and do this year with eliminating downtime, we've done 1 full holotyning early in the year when it's quiet, and then we've done only a verti drain. Because obviously, if you look at the total rounds coming through, it's to do 2 holotines. Obviously, it's cost effective for stuff like that. So there's a certain thing I'm not aware of how important a holotyning is compared to just a normal verti drain with a heavy top dressing.
Yeah, so JC, a company in Holland has actually done a study on the amount of organic matter you need to remove out your playing surface. Also, I have a very nice webinar run by the University of Florida, holotyning for the 21st century. So in summary, the simplest way for me to put it across is you need to remove 24 millimeters of a core per year to avoid serious trouble. So ideally, if it's spring or if you say summer, it doesn't really matter your timing. you're removing, say, a 12 mil core, and you're very able to get sand into a 12 mil hole. So if you do a verti-drain, you're not removing any organic matter. And the benefit of a straight verti-drain is 21 days. It's purely oxygen exchange. So after 21 days, you have zero benefit from a verti-drain. Very nice tool, very nice thing to do. If you're able to get sand in the holes, that's great. You're going to get a benefit from the abrasive action of the sand, but your infiltration rate will maybe not reduce 13%, will reduce 6.5%. So you won't see the negative effect in I don't think you'll see it in year 1 to 5, but in year 10, you'll definitely see it.
Okay. Okay, no, thanks. Yeah, because it's so what I find out is, like, if you do a proper holotine, verticut, and all the necessary stuff, like in the beginning of the year, that kind of leads up to going through the beginning heatness and going through the winter, and then once spring hits, we just do a full aggressive double verticut, and a nice, I think it's 8 mil verti drain, with a high top dress, and then we obviously brush the sand within the holes just to ensure that the sand goes into the holes, and then that leads us to December's, the heatness.
So in your spring, where you're doing your 8 mil solid, if you change that to 8 mil hollow, there's zero change to the surface. It's the same size hole.
Yeah.
So there's no. So I would definitely do that. Definitely change that to 8 mil. And if you look at your recovery from an 8 to a 12, I don't think it's going to be that much difference. And your benefit in turf maintenance is huge. But do the 8 mil. So if you decide to do the 8 mil hollow, then try and pull a 6 mil side eject somewhere. And golfers won't even be aware of a 6 mil side eject.
Yeah, perfect. Thank you.
Yeah, more.
So I know
the
we're
more
running
you
out
do,
of
the more
time.
benefit.
But can we just quickly give Steve Smith an opportunity just to ask his question? Then we'll wrap up after that, please.
Sorry, Steve, go for it.
Steve, just unmute yourself.
Yep,
there you
got
go.
it. Morning, Sue. All the way from Gaborone, Botswana. So we're in semi-desert here, okay, and due to water issues, we have to use effluent to water. I'm at World of Golf. It's a driving range, but I also advise the golf club, right? Locally, the Gaborone Golf Club. So we have to use effluent. And I had a problem last year where I thought it was fungicide, etc., when we were in the new year, and a lot of areas didn't what I did, it wouldn't come right. And I tested the soils, and I found we had the normal elements, the zincs and the whatever, calciums and whatever. But what I found was that my pH in the areas, like right next to each other, obviously they were drainage areas, was like up to 8.7 in some places, right? Really alkaline, which I thought strange because we're using effluent. But and I couldn't get anybody to tell me what I could do to try and get the acidity down to sort of something neutral. We use Gulf Green Cynodin, okay, on our greens here. And eventually I had to take out 50 mils of sand on all these areas. We had to sort of take out 50 mils in the turf and mark out all these areas, replace the sand, resprig it, and a year later now they're perfect. But I'm just wondering down the line, if something like that happens, what can I use? We have an alkalinity problem. I don't know if people test and what they do, but a big alkalinity problem with using effluent. What can I do to try and acidify it and try and keep my pH better? I think that was the problem.
So, Steve, so maybe feel free to send me your soil tests, guys. That is my absolute passion. So, my guess is it's a KCl 8.7, which means it's actually a 7.7. So it's not the end of the world. You're looking at 6.5. So my guess is you need to balance your nutrition. So you've got to look at your calcium, magnesium, potassium, sodium, those four elements. So feel free to send me that. Your phosphate should not be higher than 50 ppm. your sulfur should not be higher than 20 ppm. I'm seeing this across the board where guys are chucking down gypsum, or there's I think there's a product called
Gypro.
Verical,
Gypro,
yeah.
Gypro.
Which is an absolute no-no, and it's there are so many knock-on effects. So I think feel free to send me your soil results, sue@talkingturf.co.za. I'll develop programs for you, and then run with that.
Okay, thanks. Thank you.
Yeah. All right.
Thanks, Sue. And yeah, just if you can just maybe share your contact details again. There's a few guys that also still have a few questions, but obviously we're running out of time, so I think they can just maybe get in touch with you after the session. So if you could just maybe share your email address with them, then they can get in touch with you.
Yeah, 100%. Thank you so much. I really appreciate your time, and feel free to contact me at any point.
Thank you, Sue. Thanks for your time. Thanks for everyone that came to watch. We appreciate it, and we'll see everyone again at the next webinar. So enjoy the rest of your day.
Cool, thank you.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you, Sue.
Thank